Ron Paul's been in the Congress for nearly 25 years, and in those 25 years, he has steadfastly and consistently made these arguments about the gold standard, about sound money, about the problems with the Fed.
I think that he will be portrayed as the crazy uncle, which is what they try to do with him. It's despicable, but that's how he gets treated. You know, and I think that even though he knows more substantively about these issues than probably everyone else on that stage combined, he still gets sort of treated like he's nutty.
We don't need to just change the political parties. We need to change our philosophy about what this country is all about.
Ron Paul says to a lot of people eager to hear this message, you can be anti-war and be a conservative.
Paul has often been referred to as Dr. No because he votes against most legislation involving federal spending, government expansion, or any reduction of privacy rights.
But the government has a very serious responsibility to making the rules work. The government's doing things they shouldn't be doing and avoiding the things that they were told to do.
It's the ideals and beliefs espoused by the congressman that make him as popular as he is. Limited government, free market principles, and a devotion to the Constitution.
We don't have enough people standing on principle. For instance, they compromise on the welfare state, they compromise on the warfare state, they compromise on endorsing the monetary system. So I think we have way too much compromise, and we need to define what we believe in. We either believe in welfareism and socialism and big government, or we believe in liberty and limited government and the Constitution. Everybody gets everything that they want in Washington, whether it's overseas spending or any welfare spending. It's endless. They can't figure out what we're doing in Washington, and I go there on a regular basis. I can't figure out what they're doing. They seem to live in a different world.
Representative Ron Paul won the presidential straw poll at last week's Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, much to the dismay of Mitt Romney and Sarah Palin and Tim Pawlenty and a bunch of other mainstream Republican hopefuls. Ron Paul is a congressman from the 14th District in Texas. He's a former presidential candidate, and he's been warning all of us about a lot of these issues for a long time.
People have underestimated the number of people in this country that are interested in a freedom message. Just being free of the government, oppression of us, whether it's on our personal liberties, our economic liberties.
And leaving people alone is not something I often hear politicians talk about.
That's sad, and I tell people the reasons I run for president not because of the things I want to do, but more because of the things I don't want to do.
Ron Paul is the only candidate I've seen of any party that has been addressing the devaluation of our dollar.
This idea of going and talking to attorneys totally baffles me. Why don't we just open up the Constitution and read it? You're not allowed to go to war without a declaration of war. This is just war propaganda, continued war propaganda, preparing this nation to go to war and spread this war not only in Iraq but into Iran unconstitutionally.
Woo! That was Republican Congressman Ron Paul on fire at yesterday's debate. Paul is trying to remind us, the Republican Party, what exactly it means to be conservative, and it appears the candidates are not listening.
You know, Ron Paul, I mean, I have no particular horse in the race. Ron Paul raised $2.5 million in one day on the internet today, putting a lie to the idea that you can't be competitive unless you're welded to the political machinery and the big corporate aristocracy and money press in this country. I've had enough of the Bushes and Clintons.
You know, he's got an incredible following out there, Ron Paul. Gloria?
Well, a lot of people like him because, as Jack was saying, he's not just more of the same. He's a different kind of candidate. He's a candidate that sort of says, get the government out of your life.
Ron Paul has a set of ideas that he has been pushing in public life for decades now that he considers are vital to the survival and freedom of the United States.
It took the contributions of many great Americans to make our country what it is today. Here to spotlight those who had the greatest impact on our nation's development is presidential historian Doug Weed.
Thomas Jefferson lives. He's Ron Paul. If Jefferson lived today, he would rail about the Federal Reserve. He wouldn't like that. He'd be appalled by our ongoing wars, our nonstop wars.
In a lot of ways, it really should be your time because these issues that you've talked about, and I remember interviewing you back in 2008 about cutting spending, cutting the debt, shrinking government, really are front and center now.
I think what's changed is that a lot of ideas that Ron Paul has that people considered wildly eccentric or crazy 4 years ago are now widely seen to actually be correct. I think more people are seeing that Ron Paul is not a nut. Ron Paul is actually someone with ideas that are extremely important for Americans to consider.
They will beat the drums of fear. That's how we
you get things done in Washington, whether it's on foreign policy. They're about to attack us and they're going to bomb us with nuclear weapons, and they get Congress to do things.
Might mean that we not allow the president to get away with a position now that he has adopted to assassinate American citizens. Just, he's a bad guy and we can't find him. He's to be assassinated, and have military tribunals in peacetime, have the Patriot Act invade the privacy of the American people.
You say that the federal government should stay out of people's personal habits. You say marijuana, cocaine, even heroin should be legal if states want to permit it. Senator, are you suggesting that heroin and prostitution are an exercise of liberty?
Well, I probably never use those words. You put those words someplace. But, yes, in essence, if I leave it to the states, it's going to be up to the states. Up until this past century, for over 100 years they were legal. What you're inferring is, what? If we legalized heroin tomorrow, everybody's going to use heroin. How many people here would use heroin if it was legal? I bet nobody would put their hand, oh, yeah, I need the government to take care of me. I don't want to use heroin, so I need these laws.
I never thought heroin would get applause here in South Carolina.
Does it make sense to you that a budget deal that's being hashed out right now, which is all about reducing spending, includes all these riders, including one about delisting the gray wolves from the endangered species list, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with actually cutting spending?
No, but there's not much in Washington that's ever made much sense to me for a long time. So no, that doesn't make any sense. And it really shows how out of touch so many people are here in Washington.
But when I listen to you, I hear you talk about first founding principles, which, by the way, are really important. And I think that's the area that I would find an agreement with you.
When you think about it, if you measured everything I've ever said, every vote I've ever taken against the Constitution, I'm a strict constitutionalist. Are you suggesting the Republicans should write me off because I'm a strict constitutionalist? I'm the most conservative member here. I have voted, against more spending and wasting government than anybody else. Mr. Republican Robert Taft didn't even want us to be in NATO. And you're saying now that we have to continue to borrow money from China to finance this empire that we can't afford? Let me see if I get this right. We need to borrow $10 billion from China, and then we give it to Musharraf, who's a military dictator who overthrew an elected government, and then we go to war, we lose all these lives promoting democracy in Iraq. I mean, what's going on here?
But all of us should be very glad that Ron Paul stays in this race.
He represents our true Constitution and conservative values, sir. He is our candidate.